He saved a child from falling off a cliff, then froze. As the dying mother revealed, the girl was his own blood. The Wind and the Edge. Las Salinas, New Mexico Territory, il 14 giugno 1887. The wind cut like iron filings. It came down from the mesa hot and mean, dragging grit and memory in equal measure. I was out checking the south fence, same work I'd done 1,000 times, the kind a man does when there's nothing else worth fixing. The bay horse moved slow, head down, his shadow thin as wire against the sun-baked earth. A man alone learns the rhythm of land and silence, the hammer of hoofbeats, the groan of stretched wire, the creak of his own bones telling him the day's half done. That was my gospel out there, until something broke the pattern. It was a sound that didn't belong, sharp, high, human, not the cry of bird or coyote. My horse stopped on his own, ears cutting the wind. I turned, and the world tilted. Down the ridge, maybe 30 yards, a small shape dangled where the sandstone gave way. Dust and pebbles skittered off into the canyon. I saw a hand, no bigger than my palm, clutching at a weed root. Then another cry, thin, terrified, alive. I kicked free of the stirrup and slid down the slope. The ground went loose under me, heat biting through my shirt, each step a gamble between hurry and death. "Hold on," I shouted. The child turned her head, dark eyes, full of a fear I recognized too well. She couldn't have been more than 5, barefoot, dust-caked. A scrap of blue cloth tied around her shoulder. Her fingers slipped once and caught again, leaving red on the stone. I dropped flat, belly to dirt, stretching down till my shoulder screamed. "Easy," I said, low and steady. "I've got you." She blinked up at me, maybe not understanding the words but hearing the tone. Her left hand let go. I caught it before the wind could claim her. The root tore loose. The world went silent except for our breath. I pulled with everything I had left in me, and then she was in my arms, weightless, shaking, dust mixing with tears on her face. I set her down on solid ground, crouched so my eyes met hers. "You're safe now," I said, though the word felt fragile out here where safety's a joke. Her chest fluttered. She looked past me, toward the flats, lips moving without sound. That's when I heard it, a woman's voice, shouting something wild and broken. I looked up. A figure was running from the far plain, stumbling through sage and thorn, waving both arms, long black braids snapping in the Sunday. The child stirred, reaching toward the sound. "Mama," she whispered, the words soft as breath through grass. I turned fully then, the horizon shimmering. The woman kept running, half falling, catching herself, refusing to stop. Dust clung to her dress, her face streaked with sweat and blood. When she reached the ridge, she fell to her knees, gasping, one hand over her heart, the other reaching for the girl. I took a step closer, and time stopped. I knew that face. Even under the sunburn, the years, the exhaustion, it was her. "Nalina," I said. The name tore something open in my throat. Her eyes snapped to mine, widening with a recognition that wasn't kind. She swayed, catching herself on a rock. For a heartbeat, she looked ready to curse me, or strike me, or vanish back into the wind. Instead, she stumbled forward. I caught her before she fell. She was lighter than I remembered, bones sharp under skin. "You," she whispered. The word wasn't gratitude. It was accusation and disbelief, bound up in the same breath. I eased her down beside the child. "Easy, you're safe. You're hurt?" She shook her head once, breathing ragged, the sound of sandpaper on lungs. "No safe," she said. "They come, fire, years gone." Her English was halting, but the meaning hit clean. Memories I'd buried under whiskey and fence posts clawed their way up. The raid on the reservation border, the night we were supposed to escape together. She'd been there. I'd gone for help. By the time I came back, the camp was smoke and silence. I thought she was dead. "Nalina," I tried to. She pressed her fingers to my chest, stopping the words. Her eyes had gone soft and strange. "No talk," she whispered, voice fading. She turned to the little girl, brushed her cheek, then looked back at me. "She live, because you pull." The child was watching us both, wide-eyed, not understanding the weight in the air. Nalina gathered what breath she had left, caught my hand, and set it on the girl's shoulder. Her name, Tacy's, she said, trembling. Your blood, Cole. You left, but she stay. The ground went out from under me. For a second, all I could hear was the wind, whispering through the wire above. Same old song, but it sounded different now, like judgment. My hand stayed where she'd put it. The girl's heartbeat fluttered under my palm, quick and alive. My throat closed. Mine? I asked. Nalina nodded once, the motion barely more than a breath. After fire, she whispered. You gone. I hide. She born. My promise. Your promise. Then her eyes rolled back, and she sagged. I caught her before she hit the dirt. She wasn't dead, just spent, body paying for the miles it had carried her. The girl clung to me, half crying, half shaking, whispering sounds I didn't understand. I gathered them both up, one arm under the woman, one holding the child, and started for the horse. The bay sidestepped, nervous, but held steady as I lifted them. Every step down that slope felt like penance. Years of silence pressed down on my shoulders, heavier than the 2 lives I carried. When we reached level ground, I turned toward home, the cabin waiting by the creek, the only roof I'd ever managed to keep standing. Behind us, the ridge shimmered in the heat, already swallowing the prints we'd made. The child's head rested on my shoulder, her breath warm against my neck. The woman's hand brushed the reins once, as if to tell me the road wasn't finished yet. If you enjoy the story, hit that subscribe button right away. And if you don't, then just hit the like button anyway to keep more Wild West love stories coming. By the time we reached the flats, the sun had dropped behind the red hills. The wind came cool, almost kind. I rode with both of them close, the smell of dust and smoke and something like forgiveness in the air. The West doesn't give back what it takes, but sometimes, if you listen close, it lets you try again. Ashes and name. By the time I reached the cabin, dusk had turned the sky to brass. The wind had fallen quiet, heavy with the scent of rain that wouldn't come. My horse was lathered, sides heaving, and I wasn't far behind him. I'd carried weight before, grain, tools, the dead, but never something that breathed like forgiveness and punishment in the same armful. The door stuck as I shouldered it open. The hinges groaned, same as they always had. But the sound felt different now, like the house itself was testing whether I still belonged. Inside smelled of old wood, smoke, and the slow rot of solitude. Dust hung in the air like the ghosts of all the words I never said. I laid Nalina on the bed, the child on a folded quilt near the hearth. The girl stirred, whispering something in Apache. Her small hand clutched my shirt till I pried my fingers loose. You're home now, I said, though I wasn't sure which of us I meant it for. The fire had gone to ash. I knelt, fed it scraps of cedar until it caught again, thin flame trembling like a newborn. The light spilled across Nalina's face, turning sweat into silver. I poured water into a tin cup, tipped a bit between her lips. She drank slow, the sound soft, her throat working like someone who'd fought too long against thirst and ghosts. When her eyes opened, they found me with a steadiness that made the room smaller. You still live, she said. Not a question, a reckoning. Seems that way. I tried to smile. It died quick. You should have been safe. I thought. She raised her hand, palm trembling. You thought wrong. The silence that followed was the kind that makes a man remember everything he's tried to forget. The girl coughed once, a tiny sound that cracked the stillness. I crouched beside her, brushed the hair from her face. Tazi's, I said, trying her name. It felt heavy in my mouth, sacred somehow. Her eyes opened, same dark as her mother's, same fire I'd seen once by the river before the raid. Something in my chest twisted. She looks like you, I said, not expecting an answer. Nalina's gaze softened, just a flicker. She looks like both, she whispered, and the words cost her breath. Outside, the wind picked up again, dragging a loose shutter against the siding. I stoked the fire higher, fed it cedar, till the light filled the cracks in the wall. Nalina's shadow danced long and thin, like she might slip through it if I blinked. I buried a wife under the cottonwood, I said quietly, and a promise beside her. Thought I'd finished with all that. Nalina didn't move. Her voice came low. You think you finished with promise? That stopped me cold. The flame popped. The smell of smoke crawled through the boards. She turned her face toward me, eyes sharp despite exhaustion. "Promise is not grave," she said. "It wait." I sat on the edge of the table, elbows on my knees. "Then I reckon it's been waiting a long time." For a while, no one spoke. The child slept curled tight, hand clutching the rag doll I'd once made for another life. The doll's button eyes caught the firelight, two small moons watching over a world that didn't deserve them. Nalina's gaze lingered on the toy. "You still make things," she murmured. "Sometimes, when winter's long and the whiskey runs out." A hint of a smile ghosted across her lips. "Then winter must be long here. It's all I know how to stand." She looked at me for a time that felt like prayer. Then, softer, "You left for help that night." "I did. They said you trade us. Said white men come because you show the path." My jaw locked. "They said wrong." "I know," she whispered. "Too late. I hide. I wait. You never come." The words landed heavy, like stones dropped down a well that had no bottom. "I came," I said, voice rough. "But there was nothing left to come to. I buried what I found. Thought you were gone." Her eyes closed. "Now you know. She live. You live. That means something." Maybe it did. Maybe it was just another wound, refusing to close. I didn't have answers, only the sound of the fire and the small breaths of a child who carried both our sins. Thunder muttered far off, but no rain came. I rose, pulled a spare blanket from the shelf, and spread it near the fire. "You rest," I said. "I'll keep watch." Nalina shook her head faintly. "You already watch too long alone." That line cut clean. I didn't answer. Instead, I sat down beside the girl, back against the wall. Her small fingers, even in sleep, found mine like roots finding water. I let them stay. The fire cracked. Shadows crawled across the floorboards. For the first time in years, the cabin didn't feel like a tomb. It felt like a heartbeat, learning its rhythm again. After a while, Nalina spoke, eyes half open, voice somewhere between dream and confession. "They will come again. Men who follow the trail. They think I steal from them. Then they'll meet me instead. You cannot fight them all. I don't aim to. Just enough to make the rest think twice." She breathed a weak laugh that turned into a cough. "Still stubborn." "Still alive," I said. Her hand drifted toward the Colt on my belt, not in threat but memory. "Same gun?" I nodded. "Same sin too." She looked into the fire. "Maybe sin keep you alive, but not forever." Outside, lightning blinked without sound, the kind of storm that promises but never delivers. I reached for the kettle, poured hot water into a basin, and cleaned the cut along her arm. She winced but didn't pull away. "You always fix what can break," she said quietly. "Only what I know how to fix." When I finished, she lay back, breath easing. I moved to the window, watching the plains fade to shadow. Coyotes sang somewhere down the ridge, a lonely chorus that made the night feel wider. Behind me, she whispered, "The child will wake hungry. I've got jerky, cornmeal, little honey left from spring. She will ask for you. She don't even know my name." Nalina's voice trembled. "She knows. I tell her stories, of man who saved us once, of man who walk alone." I turned, throat tight. "You shouldn't have." "Why?" "Because that man failed you." She shook her head slow. "No. He live." That enough for her to hope. The room swayed in the flicker of firelight. The words lodged somewhere deep, where guilt and grace mix into the same ache. I looked at the girl again, her small chest rising steady, the doll pressed close. Maybe hope was a thing born from ruins. Nalina closed her eyes, whispering something in her tongue, a prayer or a warning. I couldn't tell. I caught only one word, Hojua, the Navajo word for harmony, though she was Apache. Maybe peace crosses tribes when the heart's tired enough. I leaned my head back against the wall, the heat soaking through my boots, and listened to the breathing of two souls I'd never expected to share a roof with again. The west outside was still hard and mean, but inside that cabin, for the first time in a decade, there was something soft enough to hurt. The fire burned low, the wind pressed gentle at the door like it wanted in. Somewhere a nightbird cried and then thought better of it. I looked over at Nalina. Her eyes were open, watching me through the half-light, For a heartbeat, neither of us were ghosts anymore. The words hung strange in the cabin, half joke, half prayer to anyone still awake in the world. Outside, the horizon smoldered with heat lightning. Inside, the fire sighed, and three shadows leaned toward one another like branches remembering how to reach for light. "If you like Wild West love stories or Wild West stories," I said, voice breaking its long quiet, "drop a bunch of 1 second and your place in the comments for the Wild West Love channel. Tell me where you're listening from so I don't feel so alone out here." Tracks in the dust. Morning came slow and gray, the kind that fools a man into thinking peace might last. I woke before the fire died, out of habit more than rest. The air smelled of cedar smoke and rain that hadn't fallen, a promise half kept by the sky. Nalina was still asleep, her arm curved around the child. They looked too still for this land, like two pieces of a dream the desert would notice soon and try to steal back. I watched them a moment longer than I meant to. Then I swung my legs off the cot and felt the floor's chill climb my bones. The stove coughed when I fed it kindling. I poured yesterday's coffee grounds back in the pot, more out of hope than flavor, and stepped outside before the sun found its courage. The horizon was pale and wide, clouds hanging low, thick as old wool. My horse stamped near the post, ears twitching. He smelled something I couldn't yet. Out here, animals read the air better than men ever would. I walked the fence line, palm on wire. It hummed faintly, a low music of wind and tension. Down by the creek I found them 2 sets of tracks, horses shod, heading west but looping back. Fresh, no more than a day old. I squatted, thumb tracing the shape. Deep impressions, narrow shoes, ranch stock, not army. The sand still held their weight like the land hadn't decided whether to forget them. The wind shifted, carrying dust off the ridge. It smelled faintly of iron. Trouble always had a scent if you'd lived with it long enough. When I came back, the cabin was awake. Nalina stood by the window, hair unbound, brushing the girl's dark strands smooth. Tassis laughed, a sound clean enough to shame the morning. It hit me harder than any bullet could, what it felt like to have something fragile under your roof again. I set the coffee pot on the stove. "There were riders," I said. 2, maybe 3. Headed this way yesterday." Her hands stilled midair. "You think they come again?" "I think they never left." She nodded once, calm like a soldier who's buried too many fears to waste one more. "You go see." "I go," I said, "but you bolt the door. If anything sounds wrong, don't wait." Her eyes met mine, dark and sure. "We wait before. No more wait." That one sentence carried more weight than my rifle ever could. I wanted to answer comfort, promise. Anything but words live short out here. I settled for touching the doorframe, a gesture that meant stay safe in a language older than English. Outside, the day was sharpening, the kind of light that cuts mountains into blade shapes. I saddled up and rode slow, following the tracks till they broke toward the flats. The land felt different now that it held people I cared about. Every sound was louder, every shadow sharper. At the arroyo's edge, I found where the riders had stopped, boot prints near a cold fire, ashes still gray-soft. They'd been watching the ridge, maybe the cabin itself. I crouched, stirred the ashes with my knife, found a charred scrap of paper. My own name still clear, half a wanted notice. Not for crime, but for questions. Folks in town never forgave confusion. The border raid years back had left its scars, some on flesh, some on rumor. They'd painted me half traitor, half fool. That's the kind of stain a man can't scrub off, only outlive. A twig cracked behind me. I spun, rifle halfway up, then stopped. Just my horse, spooked by a jackrabbit. Still, my heart took a while to catch up. I lingered there longer than sense allowed, scanning the horizon. The wind carried small sounds, pebbles shifting, brush creaking, like the land whispering names I didn't want to hear. When nothing moved, I turned for home. By midday, the heat came back mean and sudden. The world smelled of dust and sage. Sweat salted my lips, tasted like memory. I rode with one eye on the ridge and one on the past, both of them equally dangerous. When the cabin finally showed, small and stubborn against the glare, relief hit me in the gut. Smoke rose steady from the chimney, signal of life, or at least defiance. Inside, Nalina was sewing a tear in her sleeve, needle flashing in the light. She didn't look up, just asked, "They come?" "Not yet," I said. "But they're close enough to think about it." She tied the thread, bit it clean. "Then we think together." I wanted to tell her she should leave, take the child somewhere safer, but I knew the answer before it left her lips. This land had already taken enough. To run would only give her ghosts new ground to follow. Afternoon crawled by. I split logs till my shoulders burned, fixed the barn hinge that had been whining for months, anything to keep my hands busy while my mind circled the same fence of what-ifs. Each swing of the axe felt like arguing with fate. The girl followed me for a while, chasing chickens, her laughter stitching holes in the silence. When she brought me a wildflower, a brittle stem, yellow as the sun, I stuck it in my hatband. She beamed like she'd just fixed the world. Maybe she had, for a heartbeat. By dusk, the light bled red along the ridges. I hauled water from the creek, scanning the brush for movement. Coyotes yipped far off, too early for night, which meant something bigger had pushed them aside. When I stepped back inside, the room felt smaller, warmer, dangerous in its comfort. Tassis was asleep again, her rag doll tucked under her chin. Nalina sat near the fire, mending a blanket edge, the rhythm of her needle steady as prayer. I sat across from her, the silence thick with everything we didn't dare say. Firelight painted her skin, copper and gold, soft where I remembered it strong. She looked up once, eyes glinting through the heat shimmer. "You still afraid of ghosts?" I shook my head. "Not the ones that talk back." A faint smile curved her mouth, gone as quick as it came. "Then you stronger than before, or just too tired to run?" Her gaze held me a moment. Same thing. Wind pressed against the cabin walls, dragging sand over the roof like restless fingers. I checked the rifle by the door, laid extra shells beside it. Habit born from too many bad nights. Nalina watched, quiet. Then she said, "If they come, you no fight alone." "You'd shoot?" "I shoot if I must." She reached for her bow short, carved from desert oak. The string hummed when she tested it. I'd forgotten how steady her hands could be. "Still works," she said simply. I nodded. "Then we got a chance." She turned back to the fire. Chance enough. Hours passed that way, two people mending what couldn't be mended, pretending the world outside wasn't circling closer. I thought of all the names carved on my conscience, and how some ghosts wear boots. When I finally stretched out near the door, rifle within reach, the last thing I saw before sleep took me was her shadow moving gentle across the firelight, keeping watch when she thought I couldn't see. Outside, the wind dragged across the desert, sounding almost like voices, old ones, warning or forgiving. I couldn't tell. Maybe both. The smell of cedar and smoke folded around me, and for a little while, even with death sniffing the wind, I dreamed of quieter years, ones that never truly were, but still felt close enough to reach. Somewhere in that half-sleep I heard her whisper to the child, soft in Apache, "Do not fear the dust. It remembers kindness too." When dawn came again, it would bring riders or rain. Maybe both. But tonight the fire held. And for a few stolen hours, that was victory enough. "Hey there, friend. Take a moment and get yourself a full glass of water. Your body will thank you." The reckoning ride. The next morning came hard and cold. Clouds stacked low over the ridge like they were waiting for something ugly. The creek had gone quiet, and even the wind held its breath. That's how I knew before I saw them trouble rides quiet. The coffee on the stove tasted like iron. I drank it anyway, watching the horizon through the open doorway. Nalina moved behind me, tying her hair, the sound of her braid whispering like rope through fingers. The child hummed to her doll, off-key and soft. For a heartbeat it almost felt like life could go on. Then the horse snorted outside. Not mine, different rhythm, heavier shoes. I stepped out. 3 riders broke the line of the horizon around noon, long coats, rifles across saddles, faces half-shadowed under hats. The air behind them shimmered with dust the color of old bones. I knew 2 by the tilt of their shoulders, Baker and Sloan, ranch hands from the South Range, men who carried more whiskey than mercy. The third I didn't know, but I didn't like his eyes. They came slow, deliberate, the way men ride when they've already decided something. I waited on the porch. My rifle leaned against the post close enough to reach, far enough not to start what couldn't be stopped. "Morning," I said. Baker grinned. All teeth. No humor. "Hell of a morning to pay a call, Cole. Folks in town been wondering if you died out here." "Still breathing," I said. "What do you want?" Sloan spat dust. "Heard tell you took in some company. Apache woman. Little half-breed girl." "That true?" The words came sharp, honed on the edge of small minds. My jaw tightened. "They're under my roof. That's all you need to know." The stranger laughed a short, ugly sound. "You sure about that? Town don't like your kind of charity. Makes folks talk. Then let 'em talk." Baker leaned forward in his saddle. "This land's hard enough without you bringing more trouble down. You send 'em off now, we walk away." I didn't move. Behind me I heard the faint creak of the door, Nalina watching, the child at her side. "I said they stay," I told him. "You've had your say, now ride." Sloane's smile thinned. "You forget who helped you build this place, who hauled your wood when your hand was broke. Don't throw your lot in with them. Ain't your blood." "Oh, blood's just water with a history," I said. "And I've spilled enough to know it don't buy decency." The stranger's horse shifted, nostrils flaring. "You think you can stand against a town?" "I don't need to," I said. "Just need to stand between you and that door." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Wind stirred dust at our boots, whispering like ghosts come to listen. Then Baker spat again. "Mean this time." "This ain't done," he said. "Never is," I answered. They wheeled their horses and rode off, dust trailing like smoke from a slow fire. I didn't lower my hand till they vanished over the ridge. The quiet that followed was the kind that rings in your ears. When I turned, Nalina was still in the doorway. Her daughter clung to her skirt, wide-eyed. "You risk," she said quietly. "I live here," I told her. "Risk comes with it." She stepped closer, voice low, the old accent curling through her English. "You fight for us when you owe nothing. Lovin', I owe more than you think." Her eyes searched mine. Maybe she saw it, the old sin, the night I didn't come back soon enough, the man I'd been before the smoke cleared. Whatever she saw, she didn't turn away. We spent the rest of the afternoon in a silence thick enough to chew. I checked the rifle, the shells, the fence lines. Every motion had weight now. She gathered herbs near the creek, knife flashing like a small truth in the light. The girl followed her, chasing dragonflies, laughter scattering through the still air like bright bird calls that didn't belong. By sundown the clouds had settled heavy over the ridge. Thunder grumbled somewhere behind the mountains, far off but coming. The smell of rain mixed with dust and fear. When darkness fell, we ate what little we had: cornbread, beans, coffee thin as memory. The child dozed with her head in Nalina's lap. "You could leave," I said. "Cross to the mission settlement west of here. They'd take you in." She shook her head. "You think safety lived behind walls. Same men who prayed there once burned our camp." I had no answer to that. She looked toward the window where the dark pressed against the glass. "You have friends in town?" "Had." I smiled without meaning it. "Men who forget fast once fear changes hands." She studied the fire. "Then we make our own friends." "You mean the rifle and that bow?" Her lips twitched. "They never lie." We both laughed, quiet and short. Even laughter sounds like a confession when death's outside listening. Later, after the girl was asleep, I stepped onto the porch. Lightning flashed on the horizon, showing the desert in white bones and long shadows. My horse stamped once, ears pricked toward the south. Somewhere out there, 3 men rode circles in the dark, deciding if pride was worth dying for. Inside, Nalina stood by the doorway, a blanket around her shoulders. "They come tonight?" "Maybe. Maybe they just want me scared." "You scared?" "Yeah," I said. "Means I still care what happens." She nodded, came out beside me. We listened to the wind drag across the land. She spoke then, so soft I almost missed it. "When I was little, my father say fear is spirit that wants a name. If you speak it, it becomes smaller. So what do you call this one?" She thought. "The fear that guards." That name sat between us like a small fire of its own. I slept little. Each creak of the cabin boards, each shift of wind, Felt like the start of something final. Toward midnight I heard coyotes yipping close, then silence again, like even they didn't want part of what was coming. Before dawn I saddled my horse. The air had that taste before a storm, ozone and old regret. Nalina stepped out, shawl tight around her. You go to them? Better they find me than the cabin. She laid a hand on my arm. You not alone. I'll be quicker alone. Though. Her grip tightened. Quicker not always better. The look in her eyes stopped me cold. There was no plea there, only recognition. Two people long past begging the world for fairness. I'll come back, I said. You said that before. The words hit like a whip crack, but there was no anger, only memory. I touched her hand, rough against rough. I mean it this time. She let go first. Then ride careful, Cole. The sky was the color of tarnished brass when I rode out. Wind scoured the flats, carrying grit that bit the skin. I followed the track south, the one the three riders had cut yesterday, until I saw smoke lifting from a mesquite draw. They'd camped there, maybe thinking the ridge would hide them. I reined in at the crest, studying. Baker's Bay gelding, Sloan's roan, and the stranger's black stood tied near a dying fire. The men were talking low. One cleaned a rifle. Another sharpened a knife. I could have shot first 3 rounds, 3 graves, but killing never fixes what small minds break. Instead I called out, Baker! They turned fast, hands to weapons. I held mine easy but ready. You come for a fight. Make it clean. Don't circle women and children. The stranger laughed. You got big words for a dead man. Maybe I was. But I'd learned that some things live only if you stand for them. The wind rose again, swirling dust between us, and for a heartbeat we couldn't see. A shot cracked through the haze, Sloan's. It went wide, hissed past my ear. I fired once, hitting the rock by his boot. The echo rolled across the valley like thunder answering thunder. When the dust settled, none of us fired again. Maybe they saw something in my face that said I'd stop missing next time. Baker spat, rage sour in his mouth. You'll regret this. Already do, I said. They mounted slow, shoulders heavy with what pride leaves behind, and rode off east without another word. I sat there till the echo died. Then I turned home. The storm finally broke halfway back sheets of rain, cold and hard. It beat the dust down, washing tracks away as fast as they formed. Maybe that was mercy. Maybe it was warning. By the time I reached the cabin, the world smelled of wet earth and smoke. Nalina waited on the porch, the girl pressed against her leg. I slid from the saddle, mud running off my coat. You come back, she said simply. I told you I would. Her hand touched my cheek, just once. Then storm finished nothing, still more to live. Inside, the fire burned low, steady. The girl slept again. Nalina sat near the hearth, sewing the edge of the same blanket, her shadow long across the wall. I sat across from her, rifle across my knees, listening to the rain on the roof. Outside, the desert washed itself clean. Inside, I tried to remember what forgiveness felt like. For the first time in a long while, I didn't reach for the bottle. I just watched her hands move sure, patient, alive. The rhythm of needle and thread sounded almost like a heartbeat, mending more than cloth. And when thunder rolled again, it felt less like threat, more like applause from somewhere deep in the earth, approval for a man who'd finally stopped running. If you like Wild West stories or Wild West love stories, drop a bunch of 1 second and tell me where you're watching from. It helps an old cowboy know someone's still listening out there. Ash after the storm. The morning after they rode off, the land felt strange. Quiet, but not the kind that means peace. It was the hush that comes when a storm's past and the ground's still thinking about it. I stepped outside and found the sky raw blue, the kind of color you only see after something breaks. Smoke from the hearth drifted slow through the cold air. I could hear Nalina humming low inside, a tune I didn't know but felt like I should have. The girl was laughing again, soft, the way dry grass sounds when wind brushes through it. I'd almost forgotten how small laughter could make the world feel. I hauled water from the creek, watched it catch sunlight. When I came back, Nalina was kneeling by the fire, stirring a pot, hair loose around her shoulders. Her dress had been mended again, the seams holding better this time. She looked up, smiled faintly, and said, "No riders today." "Not yet," I said. "Maybe they found other ghosts to chase." She nodded, quiet, and went back to stirring. I sat near the table, carved a bit of wood to keep my hands busy. It became something without me planning it. 3 figures, tall, small, smaller still, their hands joined. Nalina noticed before I could hide it. She came closer, wiping her hands on her skirt, and looked down at the carving. Her fingers brushed mine, light but sure. "Us?" she asked. "Us," I said. She took the little carving, set it on the mantel beside the rag doll. Then she turned, the firelight soft against her face. "You keep promise now." "I intend to." "Good," she said. "Promise not grave. Promise live." The words hit deeper than she knew. I'd spent years keeping watch over ghosts, but now the ghosts had faces that smiled back. We ate in silence. The kind that meant comfort, not distance. The girl leaned her head against my arm at one point, half asleep, and Nalina watched with eyes full of things she didn't say. When the plates were clean and the fire burned low, she came to stand beside me. For a long time, she didn't speak. Then, almost a whisper, "We stay?" I turned toward her, saw the fear hiding behind the hope. "You stay," I said. "Both of you. This is your home as much as mine." Her breath caught, eyes wet with something that wasn't sorrow anymore. She reached out, her hand tracing the scar on my jaw. "No more alone," she said softly. "No more." I promised. We stood like that while the fire cracked low. The desert outside stretched wide and unbothered, same as it ever was. But inside, the air was full of something new, quiet, alive, unafraid. If you've made it this far, I know you're a true fan of WWL. From the bottom of my heart, I wish your day is filled with health and happiness, and may a little stroke of luck find you in the next 15 minutes. Don't forget to share it with me in the comment. Later that night, after the girl had fallen asleep, I sat by the window watching the moon drag its silver over the land. I thought about the men who might come again. I thought about the grave under the cottonwood and wondered if the woman buried there would forgive me for finally living again. Maybe she would. Maybe that's what forgiveness is, leaving space for someone to begin. Nalina's hand brushed my shoulder. "You think too loud," she said, smiling. "Can't help it." She leaned in, her head resting against mine. "Then think this tomorrow, we plant." "Plant what?" "Roots." The word settled into me like soil after rain. The West was still wild, still cruel, still waiting to take what it could. But that night, with her hand warm against mine and a small child dreaming by the fire, it felt like the world had paused long enough for a man to believe in second chances. The kind born not from forgetting, but from choosing to stay. This was no fairy tale ending, just life, raw and stubborn. And maybe that was enough. Cowboy love stories, Wild West love story, they're all the same thing, really. Folks trying to find a reason to keep living when the land tries to take it away. Today's story is about pains that seemed to have no way out until a small ray of light changed everything. Do you believe that, even in the darkest times, there's always a miracle waiting at the end of the road? And if deep down you still believe that God is watching over you, quietly arranging everything, then right now, leave a comment AMEN below this video. Because who knows, at the very moment you write it, a blessing may quietly find its way into your life. Ash Fork Station, Arizona Territory, the 12th of January 1879. A lonely trapper saved an Apache woman from the steel jaws of his own snare, and that snowbound night, between the cold wind and the cabin fire, 2 lost souls began to relearn the art of trust. The wind cut like iron filings. It hissed down from the Mogollon Rim, slid through cottonwoods and the tired boards of my fence, until the whole line sang in a low, cold wire note. The first sound of the day wasn't birds nor cattle, just that lean winter breath teaching a man to keep his jaw shut and his collar high. I was out early, walking the north stretch where the fence dropped toward the creek, checking posts, checking wire, checking the old steel traps I set for meat and trade when the herds thinned. Boots crunching frost, hands numb, same work as yesterday and the day before. Monotony holds a man together when the world won't. That was when I saw something that didn't belong to the land. At first it was only a lurch in the brush.